So speaking today on this idea of progress, not perfection, and really before I jump into that, kind of an interesting moment that happened for me today. So my first job ever, the year was 1999, was in this building. I was a sophomore in high school, and I was given the privilege, the honor to be a student intern writer at the Muskegon Chronicle. That was back when they actually made paper copies of it that were delivered to your mailbox. And you might remember some of my work. I did a movie review of the classic Chicken Run, the claymation one. I don't know that it ever got any real acclaim, but I was really proud of it. So when you talk about your career coming full circle from my student internship to now speaking here, kind of neat and really fun. And maybe we can figure out a way to sort of tie that into this idea of progress, not perfection. So one of the things that I find in this career, in this field in education, is that you can be crippled by indecision, right? Whether you're a classroom teacher, whether you're a building administrator, there's a ton of decisions to make. Instructional decisions, personnel decisions, financial decisions. And so oftentimes what that means is we are spinning our wheels. We're not getting anything done because we're spent contemplating, worrying, trying to predict the future. Is this person going to work out? What if they leave my organization? If I spend this money now, what happens later when I need to spend this money somewhere else, right? So what that ultimately means is we're not getting anything done because that indecision is really making the ultimate goal of progress very, very cloudy for us. So anybody know this Julia Child? She cooked and she spoke in a funny voice, and I think there was a movie made a couple years about her life. But anyway, I found this quote to be really interesting as it relates to this idea of progress, not perfection. It says, if you're in a good profession, it's hard to get bored because you're never finished. There will always be work you haven't done. And so, to tie that in to what this presentation is, I oftentimes find myself completing a project and wanting to be done with it. Like, this is done. I'm a list guy, right? So right on my desk, there's always a list of bulleted things to do, to accomplish, to get done. And boy, the satisfaction that I get in crossing things off that list, or putting the check mark by that list, or starting a new list because my old list is too messy and overwhelming, so I get to start a new list, a clean list. It's really great, and it feels wonderful. There's satisfaction in saying, okay, this project is done. But I mean, it's never really done. I've made great progress on it. It's better than what it was. There's some finality in it, but really, if we're doing our work, especially in education, and we're doing it well, there's this constant need for revision, for reform. So we take a look at our work, we analyze it, we oftentimes put it into practice, and we realize what was once an item that was crossed off a list needs to go back on the list because there's some revision that must take place. And so, like Julia Child, and I had intentions of trying to mimic her voice, but I don't think I'm going to do that. Like Julia Child, if we're doing our job and we love our job, and we do have the greatest profession, we can never get bored, we can never be satisfied. It's progress that is the ultimate goal, not perfection, not finality. So keep on going. Raise your hand if you've read this book. Oh man, I thought, okay. So talk about your all-time backfires, right? Like I thought everyone was going to raise their hand. I was going to be like, oh yeah, of course everyone's read this book, great. So Good to Great, Jim Collins. It's a leadership book, right? So it talks about a lot of various components of leadership and what you can do as a leader to kind of set up your organization, establishment, school, however applicable you want to make it for success. And so I find a lot of comfort in this book, in my style of leadership. And so now this is more of like a plug to read it than an actual discussion about it. So put this on your reading list, and then maybe you'll come back and revisit some of the things that I said today. So I remember this very specifically, and not that I'm, Rain Man or anything, but on page 39 of Jim Collin's Good to Great. There's a quote there, and it talks about being more plow horse than show horse. Again, this idea of progress, not perfection, right? Getting things done. We are in the business of getting things done. In my building, I often say moving the needle, right? And so, these plow horse here are not maybe attractive, although it was hard to find a picture on the internet of very ugly, plow horses. But you get the idea that typically they're not show horses. They're not well groomed. They have a job to do. Their job is to make progress on plowing the field, whereas this show horse, they also have a job to do, but it's really just to look nice, right? It's not necessarily the intent that they will, be planting, leading to a process that leads to, corn being planted or anything along those lines. So, my leadership style, and really what I try to impart on the people that I work with, is for them to be more plow horse than show horse. Don't talk about your goals. Don't talk about those exciting things that you're going to do. Put them into practice. Get them done, and let the work, the outcome, the result be the show horse. Let that speak for itself, okay? Because we also live in an environment where it's really easy to, and I'm guilty of this sometimes, to send out a tweet about this great stuff that we're doing, or to throw something on social media. But you constantly have to ask yourself, is that moving the needle? Is that working toward progress? Or is that a compliancy thing? Or is that a shiny thing? Or is that something that's going to get you an attaboy? Is it really helping your students? Is it really supporting your teachers? So get your hands dirty. Jump into the work. Don't talk about it, be about it. Be a plow horse. And then this is what you get. I mean, the product is beautiful, right? I mean, you can dress things up. You can try to put a real positive spin on a messy situation, but at the end of the day, it's still a messy situation. But if you're really doing the work, what this provides is sustenance. It provides a product, an outcome, and that's really what we should be about. Jim Collins also talks about this idea that discipline plus consistency equals momentum. And when I think about momentum, I think about progress, because as I stated before, work is never done, all right? Those checklists, crossing things off, that's somewhat superficial. So really all that we're looking for in our buildings, in our schools, in our organizations is positive momentum. Momentum of progress. Getting work done, making things happen. I told you Jim Collins was really great, and that was a wonderful leadership book. He talks a lot about how great of an organization Circuit City is. Okay? And so a really easy way to bring us back is to say sometimes we're not going to get it right. Okay? And I think that's okay. For me, there's a tremendous amount of comfort that comes in failure. What failure really is an opportunity to learn. And it also gives you a chance to display that you're humble, you're broken, you're fractured. Just like our teachers, just like our students, we make mistakes, and we can own those and fix them, and that ultimately is progress. I mean, not everybody always gets it right the first time. But when you revise, reform, that's typically when good things happen. Like I said, not everybody always gets it right the first time. So this is Tom Brady's draft card from the year 2000. Selected in the 6th round, the 199th pick overall. Okay, so again, not everyone always gets it right, but recognizing those failures, learning from those failures, and making change is an important aspect of really growing your organization and having a sound foundation. So I had to temper myself not to make this too overwhelmingly religious in nature. But 1 Timothy 6:12, really the gist that I wanted to tie into this presentation, and it's words that I say in my building all the time, especially to my staff members, but probably more often to myself. And does anybody know where I'm going with this? It's fight the good fight, okay? So this idea of progress, not perfection, this idea that we don't have ideal situations all the time, all right? Kids don't always perform the way we want them to perform. They don't always act the way that we want them to act. You know, sometimes the sky falls, right? But as you're gaining that momentum, as you're working toward progress, not perfection, if you are continually, saying those words to yourself, fight the good fight. Fight the good fight. We as educators, as I said before, have the greatest profession. Right? We have the ability to impact lives. We have the ability to change lives, to change circumstances, to end generational poverty, all those types of things. And you need to have some type of mantra. You need to have some type of thing to keep you going. And for me, it's fight the good fight. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Vince Lombardi. You probably can't tell by looking at me, but I used to play football. And I really think Vince Lombardi is like Socrates, okay? So I'm starting to run out of time, so I'm going to go through this really quickly. Perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence, okay? So if you're working on a project, if you're working on a unit, if something's going on in your district that you've been trusted with, you're not going to be able to get it 100% right. There's going to be some failure along the way. There's going to be some mistakes along the way. But if you chase that perfection, you can certainly catch excellence. The difference between a successful person and others is not a lack of strength, not a lack of knowledge, but rather a lack of will. We like to believe that we're experts. We like to believe that we have all the answers, but in fact, that isn't always the case. And the people who I think are successful are the people who have two really strong characteristics: perseverance and grit. Okay, so if you continue to try, if you continue to work toward improvement, if you make progress, then you can chase that perfection that Coach Lombardi talks about. And this, Mrs. Heckman is here from my building. This is on every agenda, every email, everything that I send out, everything to our parents, everything to our students. And it says the achievements of an organization are the results of the combined effort of each individual. So we as leaders, administrators, teachers, we need to be humble and respect the fact that we are unable to do it alone. So any success that we have, any progress that we make is the result of everyone, all right? Whether it's the custodians, the food service folks, the teachers, the curriculum director, the administrators, everyone plays a role in the success of our education. This is Walt Disney. His empire is thriving, doing well. Although I was a little disappointed in The Lion King, I gotta say. I'm a kid from the 90s, so don't mess with the original, right? The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. Don't be crippled by that indecision, okay? Start crossing that stuff off the list, get it done to the best of your abilities, and know that you can always go back and revise and reform. We are always afforded that opportunity. And this quote, I wasn't familiar with this quote. I was actually doing a teacher observation in our art classroom, and a poster with this quote was hanging in there. And I haven't been able to shake it ever since. It says, don't watch the clock, do what it does, keep going, all right? So if you are stifled by outcomes, or SAT scores, or fund balances, or any of that kind of stuff, it's great to worry about, and obviously we're held accountable to those things, but just keep going, make that progress, and then that's kind of a synopsis. And I have 3 seconds remaining, so.